I'm glad that I've been able to pull together stuff. The Museum of Modern Art is taking in all my work. I value it tremendously. I love it. I'm proud of myself for having evolved it and offering it. So these things are, each and every one is a surprise for ourselves. More so as the material that goes into them, the actual world, is a world that's disregarded. It doesn't demand attention.
Hello and welcome to Artifacts, a living archive dedicated to preserving the first-person stories of queer, avant-garde, and underground culture, told by those who lived it. This 2022 interview features Ken and Flo Jacobs. Ken Jacobs was a prolific and highly influential American filmmaker, and one of the last surviving members of the New American Cinema Group, which emerged in the late 1960s and reshaped independent and experimental film. Raised in Brooklyn, Jacobs discovered the film programs at the Museum of Modern Art as a teenager, an experience he later described as revelatory. In the late 1950s, he lived in Provincetown, Massachusetts, where he studied painting with Hans Hofmann. In 1961, he met his future wife and lifelong collaborator, Flo Jacobs. They had 2 children, Nisi and filmmaker Azazel Jacobs. Jacobs featured Jack Smith in several early films, including Blonde Cobra and Little Stabs at Happiness, before their relationship fractured. In 1964, Ken and Flo Jacobs, along with Jonas Mekas, founder of the Film-Makers Cooperative, were arrested for exhibiting Smith's landmark underground film Flaming Creatures. Among Jacobs' most important works are Tom Tom the Piper's Son, a pioneering structural exploration of found footage cinema, and the epic 7-hour Star Spangled to Death. From 1966 to 1969, Ken and Flo Jacobs were instrumental in founding the Millennium Film Workshop, a key institution for experimental cinema in New York. Beginning in 1969, Jacobs taught film at SUNY Binghamton, where he influenced generations of students, including critic Jay Oberman and artist Art Spiegelman. In his later decades, he pursued radical investigations of visual perception and depth through a series of works he called Eternalisms.
I grew up mostly in Williamsburg. My grandmother mostly took care of me. My mother had to work. Poor people. But they had managed to invest in this house, a tiny house with 3 levels, a little backyard. And my mother would plant things. And that was wondrous, amazing. You plant things in the ground and things grow up. Wow, what an idea. I recently found a picture of my mother, younger than when she had me, with a boyfriend who looks like me. So I think that was my dad. She was interested in the arts. She wrote and she painted, and they were poor people, and she held a job. The first film I finished, Little Stabs at Happiness, I signed Kenneth Martin Rosenthal. Rosenthal being my mother's maiden name. He took me to the movies each Sunday, where we see an American film and a Yiddish film. And the Yiddish films were very often weepies, some comedies, and I had one extraordinary event at the movies. Different people would take me to the local movies, and different people would take me to see the same movie. So I saw the Hunchback of Notre Dame 3 or 4 times, and I thought that was the movies. The school offered people a pass to the Museum of Modern Art. That became my real alma mater, There were these guys who gave lectures. You just joined the crowd and listened to the lecture. I was very pimpled and very embarrassed by being so pimpled, and I didn't make friends. I was alone almost all the time. It was a month or so before I discovered that there was a theater in the basement. This was a museum that actually showed movies, of all things. And they showed Chaplin, Keaton, unbelievable films.
And with papers.
Huh?
With papers with notes.
Oh, and they gave notes, informative notes. Whoever did that, whoever was in movies with that much respect for the movie is to have notes about it. So they did. It was really wonderful. And then one day they showed a movie called Greed. Blown away. And the notes told me this Greed I was seeing, which I thought was the greatest thing, was a fragment of a much longer film. As I began moving towards wanting to make films, the lesson of Greed made it impossible to think of Hollywood. That was it. That was film. You're going to film. I got a job working for the Film-Makers Showcase, it's called.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I was managing the theater. Flo was taking the tickets, and this is how we lived. I think we lived on about $30 a month. Is that right?
Well, the rent was 40.
The rent was 40. So it was a little bit of money, but
But there was an organization called Friends of the New American Cinema.
Friends of the New American Cinema,
And
which was one rich guy, yeah. But Jonas was able to get ourselves and a few other people a small stipend. It really helped. It probably wasn't much more than $10, $20, but it made a lot of difference at that time. They could be taken into the realm of film. Imperfect film makes it film, makes it actually have a character, except not be transparent. Well,
How would you get that?
by accident, by having very, very little money, unintentionally. There was a place in Midtown, these very nice Italian guys who, I don't know what they made of us, but they would sell dated film cheaply. And it was still good. Time was money, and it meant that a very concentrated poetry had to be created.
Also, you're using 100-foot reels.
Yeah.
And it turns out that made it easier for you to use 100 feet of film side by side, a little bit off not center, but how you saw the early parts of I'm trying to remember. There's a lot right around this point.
I had a friend, we went and we looked at an exhibition of paintings, and we came to a Hofmann painting, and it knocked me out. I knew I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what he was doing, but it was done with such force and vigor, I recognized that. And, I said, who is this guy? And my friend said, Hans Hofmann. And he teaches, and he will sometimes take on impecunious students as monitors. So we both went over, we both applied, we were both accepted. My friend felt after a while that he already knew what Hofmann was. He had the goal to think he already knew what Hofmann was getting across. But I stayed for at least a couple of years, you know, and found Hofmann wonderful and very confusing. The guy didn't speak English, and very badly, and no one had the temerity to correct him. So when he was speaking about the leg, that would be the foot. The foot was the leg. Soon, the war had only reached, the Second World War had only recently ended, and I should meet a happy German. He lined stuff up, and he'd go down and he'd say his mysterious things, you know, his revealing and mysterious things.
Including Mondrian. Including the one about Mondrian.
Yes. The subject of Mondrian comes up in class. And he's not teaching right then, he's just walking around. And somehow he actually bursts into laughter, and he says, "People think Mondrian is flat. Ha ha ha." And I waited for him to get back to the subject, and it never happened. So I ended up looking for many decades on Mondrian to see if his work would become voluptuous, which it never fucking did. I can see somebody thinking space, somebody having a concept of space, conceptual depth. What the hell is conceptual depth? Well, it's what Hofmann's own work was. He wanted you to make a flat painting. He spoke about respecting the surface. So it was a painting of depth. I got out of the Coast Guard. I had the money to buy a camera. I went in and I was sold a Bell & Howell 70 DL. It had been a military camera, and it could just drive film through. It could reliably make newsreels. For the same price, I could have bought a Bolex and then had all these things I could do with the Bolex. But it was a loss, but not a big loss, because at the time, I thought I wanted to do something, a kind of a brute cinema, you know. So just being able to record was enough. I had the camera, and sometimes I had film. I met Jack Smith at the film classes I took when I got out of the Coast Guard. I met a guy named Bob Fleischner, who became a filmmaker. And he told me he had met someone else at the school who was interested in the art of film. And he was really interested in the art of film. He had seen many films, and he knew them photographically. It was uncanny. It was a different kind of brain. And he told me about this other guy who was, he said, odd. And he spoke about leaving the school with him on the subway, you know, talking. And Bob could be very boring. And the guy was listening and smiling. And then the train pulled up to a station. The guy stepped backward through the door and out, and stood there on the platform, thank you. Still smiling and knocking his head and bowing his head as the train closed its doors and pulled away. So I was very impressed by Jack before I met him. I wrote Jack and said, "Come up, it's great." And he arrived with a huge trunk of what he called his goosies, which were his word for gossamers. And things were very good for a while. Jack, there's a character in the movies that's very much like him. He plays a farmer boy at the time. And dreamy and dizzy and a bit witless. And Jack's first impression of me was that, you know. And I didn't understand it, and there was definitely more to him than that. I had a girlfriend at the time who was much more sophisticated than I was. And she worked for the Museum of Modern Art, and she had a girlfriend, and they met him also, and they said, he's funny, he's witty, he's doing this, he's playing this, you know. And that was true. So Jack began to slowly reveal himself, and he really had a wonderful sense of humor. He listened a lot to a guy that was on the radio there, a raconteur who was, I wish I could remember his name, a brilliant guy. Gene Shepard. And he picked up on Gene Shepard and tried to do his, you know, shtick, never successfully. But his own stuff began coming through. And he really was peculiar. He had ideas of cinema, mostly based around the actress Maria Montez, that were, he never gave up on it. You know, these were his values. As a kid from the sticks, I don't know where he came from, really. He made up with this kind of movie magic, this god-awful movie magic, and she got to him, and he was in love with her. He was in love with. Even years later, at the movies, looking at her and crying. It was so deep, so profound. She got to him. Something about her got to him. So his opinions about movies were rarely of any use to me. He rarely liked the things I would drag him to. You know, he would sit there really like closed, critical. Great movies would wither in front of him. They would suddenly lose their pizzazz, their allure, and just fall down dead at his feet. He had a withering look.
And tell him about the
Louder.
Born and Harder.
Oh, that was the greatest. We're both broke. Jack beckons me into a horn and hearted restaurant. You know, you put a coin into a machine, and then a little door would open, and you reach in and get your food. We don't have money. Jack takes me to the back of the place. I think he picks up a tray, and then I follow him as he goes from table to table where people are sitting and takes one thing out of this person's dish, something else out of that dish, you know, and goes to the front door, and I don't know what happens with I think with the tray, and steps out. He's gathered himself dinner. That was style. I really, that was beautiful, you know. He lived in a basement apartment with two black guys who were lovers, and he admired them. I think they were really important to him in showing them how to live, you know, how to express your sexuality. From inhibition, he got good at it. And I mean, to see this terrible print the other day of Flaming Creatures, it just releases, you know. Those people are free for that day of their life. They were free. great movie. He was a tyrant, you know. He was like the guy who made Greed. He was a tyrant. And he resented us crazily. He resented Flo. And by the end of the summer, we didn't part. We split, and for the rest of our lives together. Towards the end, Jack realized that he liked making films, but he didn't like everything that followed, and so he was making no films, no film on the camera, but directing works without film on the camera. He liked the directing process. But then he didn't like getting caught up in the world. He really despised Jonas, the first person I knew to dislike Jonas. I found out that with two images side by side, one sees depth. Depth is available. So this is a projector. Inside there is a lamp. Inside there is a light. In front is a spinning propeller. At school, we had special projectors for looking at 60mm film that could stop on a frame and advance one frame at a time as you signaled the projector to do this screening one frame at a time. And I had the idea of using two of these machines, one next to the other, and going back and forth between two adjacent frames in a film. All kinds of things could be made to happen. The position of the propeller, I mean, there are many factors that figured into the image. And we soon discovered, using adjacent frames of some films, that the Eternalism, this thing that took place where a series of frames would pass, be interrupted, pass again, be interrupted again, over and over and over. And with certain combinations, depth appeared. The Eternalism. This takes us back to the beginning of a conversation. Hofmann says, people think Mondrian is flat. Oh. And I pay a lot of attention to Mondrian, and he never goes into depth for me. He always remains a theoretical depth, a flat, two-dimensional picture of depth, an idea of depth. And I want depth. Yeah, but for two eyes, for creatures with two eyes. You know, somebody once told me the second eye is a spare. I just love the phenomena of depth, of visual depth and sound depth. One thing I used to do with our kids when they were kids was sit in the center over here and the speakers all around. And they would sit, you know, the kids were little, they would sit in my lap and they'd just listen to sound around.
Artifacts is a free oral histories platform. Please like, subscribe, and visit our website, www.artifacts.movie, for an ad-free, interactive experience with bonus content. If you're able, please make a tax-deductible donation at www.artifacts.movie/donate. Hit the link on screen to watch another Artifacts interview.